again. It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out for the program today.
Sure.
And then
My pleasure.
You bet. Before we get into Man Who Would Be King, I want to begin with 6 years ago, this pandemic changed so much about our lives. Really put, musicians at crossroads with creating and how they were going to distribute music. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach music and life today?
Well, I think there were many different experiences during the pandemic. Some people were furloughed, and some people, through great uncertainty, were in frontline units that put themselves at risk. And, everybody has to decide for themselves whether or not they were adequately compensated for their contribution to keeping the supply chains open, getting people food, gasoline, essentials. I was very lucky, and I was working from home during that time, and I had extra time, not spending 2 hours on the road commuting. So I started running, not as much as I did about 4 years prior when I was doing about 100 miles a month. But I got back into it pretty seriously. And I had to, musically, some of my production was delayed because with the shutdowns, the studios weren't open. But I was not really gigging or relying on gigs for income. So I was blessed. I wasn't really impacted. I know people who retired, they were forced into retirement because of they're okay, but there were considerations that they had to weigh out, and retirement was the best option for them. So, yeah, I got lucky. I was one of the lucky ones. It didn't really impact me in a negative way.
So, talk to me about the new album. What was kind of the vision? What was the approach? How does it feel on a visceral level for you?
Well, the way I put it is the album is titled The Man Who Would Be King. It's the name of a Rudyard Kipling story from, I think, the late 1800s. And in 1975, John Huston created a movie based on the book. And it starred Michael Caine, Sean Connery, Christopher Plummer, Shakira Kane. And it's a great film. I've seen it many times. And it's an adventure film. So, I look at music, not having to rely on it for money. I'm not thinking about what sells tickets and albums. I don't have to please anybody. I'm not really looking to just please myself. I'm looking to, basically explore my ideas and see how far I can take them. See what I have in me to produce at the highest level I'm capable of. So I see it as an adventure, the same way as the movie. It's like if you had no constraints, you didn't have to satisfy anybody else, you didn't have to work on a budget, what would you do? So that's what I'm looking to explore. And are you familiar with the movie?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So you know how it ends, and I say that the title, the reference in the title, is a timely reminder about what tragedy awaits people who lust after power.
Well, and that's another part of this too, that with the title of the album, I think about what we are living through and what artists and musicians can give to people to make us feel more connected during this
Yeah,
time of clownery and just stress. And people are going to shows and looking for art to feel that escape to a good degree. How much of what we're living through right now are you thinking about in your creative process?
well, I don't think about it as escape. What I think about, I look at people like Bob Dylan, right? Or he came about, I guess, around the 1960s, and he had some part in some of the civil rights marches, and his music, I guess you could say, maybe for some people, was kind of an anthem.
Yeah.
But if you even look back to the distant past, when you had courts and kings and nobles and clergy, a lot of the arts were created through patronage. you know. And I studied art history in college. I have a Bachelor of Science with honors in fine arts. And what we learned in the art history classes I took is how people would use paintings or commissioned works to position themselves, change their status within the court, or document basically the world and times of the people the work shared culture with. It was about the people who were participating basically in the ruling class, you know. And today, if we have the ability to produce art without the need for patronage, without the need for somebody else's money to dictate what our scope and limit is, uh, we have the ability to do work that speaks to the world and times we live in, not as an escape necessarily, but just to share perspective and maybe get at some truth that the people who listen to it um, recognize in the work, and we share that in common. We kind of commune around the truth in the work, and it can get people to change their perspective, or and the feeling of the work especially. That's what I'm focused on: what music sounds like, and how that feels to other people, not to me being the person who created it. You know, you can do music that's kind of like, escapism or some kind of therapy, but I would rather leave that, to the professional therapists.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like it's something that goes beyond mere journalistic fact reporting. When you do art, you have the ability to tell stories and create music that can, look at think about Steely Dan, songs like Kings, um, on Can't Buy a Thrill, right? Um, Music like that had a certain irony to it. It had a certain humor to it. So you're not just telling things in a literal way. There's a way that you can share a perspective on it by the way the music sounds and by the words you choose for the lyrics and how it's sung and how the feeling of the whole piece comes together. So I'm interested in exploring things like that relative to the times we live in. I really don't think about music. And so I don't want to give an exceedingly long answer to your question, but I don't think about music in terms of like hip sounds or trends, and I don't think about what I like necessarily. I kind of want to just follow my inspiration and just try to be honest about what I'm hearing and where that leads me.
So take me back to your roots, your beginnings. Where were you born and raised?
Pretty much in the same area my
Okay.
entire life, New Jersey. Little, people debate. People would probably say it was central, but it was closer to Manhattan when I was young, up until the time I was 13, and then my family moved down in the Shore area. And I've been, in New York City for to live and work, and I've been on Long Island for school, but mostly around this area. I'm based just outside Asbury Park now, so.
Okay. So how did music, how did the guitar, how did jazz, how did all of this become your destiny?
Well, I mean, I've always loved music. Like I've always had a joy for music. It's always been something that I got excited about. And jazz, really, it was no mystery. I returned to forever. I had a friend, who I was jamming with. He was a drummer, and he shared the Birds of Fire album by the Mahavishnu Orchestra. He knew I was a big fan of Jimi Hendrix, and when he shared the album, I guess his attitude, I remember exactly what he said, but it was something to the effect, hey, if you love Jimmy, you should check this out. And I really didn't get it at first, like it was very different than Jimi Hendrix. I really didn't feel that, somebody that was shredding guitar that fast could be emotionally connected to the notes. And it was like by listening to all the things that led up to that, Bitches Brew, and his, John McLaughlin's work with Miles Davis, on his archtop guitar, that the songs like Spanish Key and John McLaughlin, that I got a different perspective. And he just eventually became my favorite guitarist and musical artist. I just love John McLaughlin. But what really hooked me on jazz fusion, what really excited me about the quality and just how much fun the music sounded like, was No Mystery by Return to Forever, especially the first five songs. I mean, the whole album is great. I think they actually were nominated for. I don't know if they won that Grammy, but they were at least nominated for, I think, a song on the album. I think it was the song No Mystery, which is part of the B side where it's the acoustic set. But those first five songs, just the quality that they were writing and performing at, and just how much fun they sounded like they were having doing it. Like that was something to chase. That's something you could spend a lifetime chasing. Yeah.
So, do you remember the first live show that you saw that blew you away, that made you think, I want to do that one day, or I need more of this?
Um, I mean, I remember the first live show, but I was definitely not blown away. I guess probably would have to be probably Wayne Krantz Trio at Wetlands around late 2000 or early 2001. The music was great.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no debating that. But what really struck me about it is I didn't really see a lot of jazz fusion players emerge after the 1980s. I think that the last guys that come to mind for me are people who were playing with Miles Davis, like Robin Ford, John Schofield, Mike Stern. And, jazz fusion was still happening in the 90s, but it didn't feel like it connected with what was going on from, 69 to 75 with Miles Davis, or what Weather Report was doing and Return to Forever and Mahavishnu Orchestra. It kind of sounded different in some way. Maybe it was like the lack of R&B influence, or there was just something about it, like bands like Spyro Gyra and stuff, that really didn't hit me the same way. I just didn't connect with it. And when I heard the Wayne Krantz Trio, it just sounded like the natural extension in terms of the vocabulary that was what I fell in love with about jazz fusion in the first place. So definitely that trio, and I definitely got a lot more of it. Once I turned 21, I started going to the 55 bar, and that's how I met. That was basically the starting point for meeting a lot of the people I work with today.
So, was it always going to be music for you?
Well, I couldn't imagine my life without music. Jazz fusion is a niche market. I don't expect to reach a broad audience. I don't expect to be able to make a living from it. But I couldn't imagine my life feeling worthwhile when I'm old if I didn't continue to make records. Um, for me, there's something that feels very purposeful, like I'm called to it about music. And, I'm not really interested in figuring out how to make a living doing it, because I could make a much better living doing something else that's going to give me a lot more creative freedom in music. But I couldn't imagine my life without it.
So, with that being said, as you have this dream of getting into music, or this idea of being a musician, there's a there's a there's the dream of what your life is going to be like, and then actually living it. What's been the difference between what you thought it would be like to be a professional musician and then actually living that life?
I didn't really have any preconception, and so I don't know if the question is relevant since there's no point of comparison. But
Right.
it's the funny thing is, a lot of the time releasing music, and I think this is true for so many people now, it feels like a non-event. It feels almost like the same thing as if you had done nothing, you know? So there's that aspect of it. I had a listening party at a local business, the Asbury Book Co-op, back on April 10th, I think. And I have another one that I'm scheduling around the release of the record. And there's an article that's going to be coming out, a review. I shouldn't say an article, it's a review in Downbeat magazine, the September issue. And there's been, more coverage since I started working with publicists and things. But just the challenge of letting it roll off your back, making music and being excited to make music, even if nobody else seems to be um, recognizing what you're doing, or it's not sustainable if it was um, if you had to pay for making the music by what you earn from releasing it, you wouldn't be able to continue. So you have to find another reason. There has to be another reason for doing it than than the profit motive. So I think that's doing music at the level I'm doing it now. That's been the thing that I've accepted. And I think that's probably a challenge, especially for people who are relying on it for income.
I make a point to ask people what they do on release days, and I'm just waiting for that one musician that invites everybody that was involved in it. They put plastic all over the walls of their apartment, goggles and champagne's flying. CDs are
Yeah,
flying. It would be wonderful.
yeah, yeah,
Just to have it out. So, living next to New York, coming from Kansas City, we have 18 and Vine. Every city has their kind of hallowed jazz
yeah,
avenue of clubs, but in New York, it's the highest peak of the mountain in jazz.
yeah.
Was there a club that you always kind of wished that you could get into and play on the stage, and you finally did it, and you were up there, and you're like, man, this is great. I'm
No, I mostly do studio records
okay. I didn't know if,
because the
yeah,
the logistics of gigging for me, basically I have a full-time job and I have to pick my battles. If I try to spread myself too thin and do everything, people usually make income from gigs, from records. They're a leader, they're a sideman or a session player, they're selling merch. You know, there's so many things that people do in music. They have multiple revenue streams. And if I try to do all of that, it would just wind up being mediocre.
yeah.
So I pick a few verticals, which for me is basically making records, and I focus exclusively on that to figure out or to feel out how far I can get with that. Just by moving forward, just take it as far as I can go.
So if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see one performance, whether it's in the realm of jazz or whatever genre, what would be the one concert you would love to see?
I mean, top of mind, probably Band of Gypsies, Jimi Hendrix. Was it the Fillmore East, New Year's Eve and New Year's Day?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I mean, I think there was four shows, an early and a late show on both days, at least. I forget which one. I mean, I think it was probably songs from multiple shows that they made the original six-track Capitol Records album from. But that album definitely hit pretty hard when I was listening to it as a teenager. So
Yeah.
it'd be cool to see that.
For sure. So let me ask you this, Adam. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, everyone that knows you in varying capacities, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I really don't think about it, to be honest. Like I mean, I'm just who I am.
Yeah.
I think, the way I always thought about it was, we all have two sides. Even if we're not a public figure, we've got, who we know we are, and then we've got how other people see us. And that, could potentially be as many different ways as there are people who've met us, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the important thing is that, we know ourselves and what our values are, and we're living our values, and that we have that content of character to show people who we are in our words and in our actions, so that there's not a big gap between who we think we are and what other people see. And so just marrying the two, getting the two aligned with each other and that's just basically by knowing who I am and what I value and living those values.
So if anybody wants to get a copy of The Man Who Would Be King, the best way to benefit you is Bandcamp, or what's the best way to do that, or any of your other releases?
Well, I actually have off from work this week, and I'm working on a number of things. I have this interview with you, and I'm working on doing some recording for the last song on an EP that's going to be coming out after the publicity campaign for the LP is finished around the new year. And I'm working on a store as well for my band website. So once the store is up, ultimately, I'm just starting out with musical scores that are going to be available for free in PDF format. Then I'll roll out Sibelius and MIDI for paid tiers. And it's not a subscription model. It's just going to be, ad hoc. And then eventually the record, the CDs, they'll be available there. But, right now, pretty much streaming is how I'm making most of my revenue from music. Obviously, it doesn't pay a lot, but if anybody wants to stream, I would recommend Apple Music, not Spotify.
Okay. I will put those links in the show notes. Adam, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. Best of luck on the releases. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
Neon Jazz.